Thank you. I'm delighted to be here this morning, and I'm just wondering if you would mind giving me some indication if you were there last night. Would you mind putting up your hand? Those that didn't hear me last night, put up your hand. Those that couldn't care less, put up your hand. Thank you. For those of you who were not there last night, let me give you a little bit of background. I failed in every grade at school. I came from a third generation welfare recipient family. I had 4 fathers and 2 mothers. Most of my family had free board and lodgings with King George VI. That meant they were in jail. And my ambition in life was to be flyweight boxing champion of the world. I went to my first school at 7 years of age, and they thought I had brain damage, and they couldn't do anything with me. At 26 years of age, I was virtually illiterate, which meant I could not articulate words and had great problems in comprehension. I came to Christ at 26 years of age with my wife at a Billy Graham Crusade on May the 25th, 1959. And I suddenly realized that I was equal with all men before God, and I reasoned that if I was equal with all men before God, I no need to accept inequality with anyone. I was the son of a king. And I read 1,500 autobiographies. I studied law, accountancy, philosophy, theology, modern ancient history, politics, and economics. I went into business 3 times, lost it 3 times, paid it all back, and then the 4th time built a large real estate company, one of the largest in Australia of its kind, with offices in Singapore and Hong Kong. I've been involved in just so many different kinds of business. I sold my real estate companies some years ago. Today I have a number of involvements. One, I have 45,000 people on the staff in one area. Another area, we have the largest seminar company in the Southern Hemisphere. We put together over 2,000 conventions last year. And as well as that, we have interests in all kinds of other enterprises covering 127 countries. I do between 200 and 250 flights a year somewhere around the world. As I said last night, normally I do this kind of thing for industry. They normally pay me $10,000 an hour or $100,000 a day. I'm here free of charge because I believe that we have a debt to the people of the United States of America, and we'd like to try and repay that debt. This morning I'm going to do 2 separate things. I'm going to, first of all, speak on a book I wrote called How to Be Motivated All the Time. It all happened when I was lying down on a Chesterfield in our penthouse, and some people came up our private elevator to see Robina. They looked through the large porchway that was in the penthouse through the glass doors and saw me horizontal. And they turned to Robina and they said, "This is the first time we've ever seen Peter lying down." And she said, "Don't you take any notice of it." They said, "Well, is he asleep?" She said, "He would not be asleep." "Is he ill?" "No, he's not ill." "What is he doing?" "He's working." And they said, "How is that possible?" She said, "Look, I've been married to him for 40 years. He's motivated all the time. He's even motivated when he's asleep." And they said, "That is not possible." She said, "You try to live with him for that long and try and tell me it's not possible." And so I heard them talking and got up and walked out and greeted the people. And they said, "Robina said that you are motivated all the time. Is that true?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "How can that be possible?" I said, "Well, it's not so much a matter of learning new principles, but rather a matter of remembering and renewing that which we have long forgotten, and to re-stimulate it by new dimensions of thought on new and old, tested, tried, and true principles." I then said to them, "Good motivation means moving towards a predetermined destination. It is living quality and quantity of life that within its very heartbeat embodies the very best that an individual or a corporate group can agree to, used together with the partnership of 2 indispensable qualities, urgency and dignity." And there are many things that motivate, and I started to share with them. There are Threats motivate. Fear, commitment, crisis, conflict, love, anger, all of these things will motivate. And I started to give them the principles that I had learned over the years. You see, I did not have the disadvantage of going to university. I did not go through normal schooling. I've never been publicly educated. I did not have a mentor, or did I know anyone that was in business. But I had this incredible hunger and desire to do something. I felt that after coming to Christ that my life was renewed, and when I started to understand and comprehend the Word of God, I read that in Joel, I will restore to you the years the locust has eaten. And so I set forth on a study program that was quite different than most people use. I had to teach myself to read. And I did that by dictionaries, pointing to words and showing them to people. This sounds terribly far-fetched when you see me now. But if you was to contact anyone in Adelaide, South Australia that knew me, they would tell you that that was correct. And so I had to develop techniques that worked for me. I was not really interested in techniques that worked for anyone else, because I was looking at the people that I was getting to know that came out of higher education, and they were barely hanging on to a job. They were unable to think in dimensions that I felt were necessary to think to be successful. I wanted to learn to speak in public, so I went along to a public speaking course. I paid the fee, but when the man introduced himself that was going to teach, I ran out of that room and never ever went back, not even to collect my fees. You see, one of the great problems today is that we tend to teach people an awful lot of theory, and indeed, I was in Houston the other day, and one woman lamented to me that she has 4 degrees and cannot get a job. When I was in Minneapolis last year, a taxi driver picked me up to take me to a convention, and he told me that he wanted to be successful. And he asked me about my accent, and we started to talk, and I shared a few things with him. He said, I'd like to have some more money. I'd like to be rich. I'd like to be wealthy. I said, well, what are you doing about it? He said, I've taken this course in computers. I said, now answer me this question. The person that's teaching you computerization, is he rich? He said, heck no. He said, he drives a clapped-out Volkswagen. I said, well, what makes you think that if he can't be rich, that he can teach you to be rich? And he pulled the taxi over to the curb and ran his hands through his hair and said, I never thought of that. And so we're going to do some things today that are a little different. And in speaking about motivation, the first principle is, remember that motivation is deeply personal. Nobody can get inside your mind and body and act it out for you. Sometimes we think it's wonderful to be with a group of people that are motivated, and it makes us agile, hostile, and mobile. But immediately they go away, it starts to fall off. Motivation is deeply personal. Nobody can get inside your mind and body and act it out for you. Motivation will determine your lifestyle. If you do not have motivation, then you will indeed have a different lifestyle. Motivation determines your relationship with other people. Have you ever noticed that when someone is highly motivated, people are drawn to that person, almost trying to feed off and gain something of it? And motivation is a disciplined personality. It's a lot different than walking around slapping people on the back and making promises that you cannot keep, and making commitments that you have no ability to fulfill. Motivation is a magnet to other people, and let me tell you that your personality can be changed. We read books that tend to put us into little pigeonholes in respect to our personality. Let me tell you that I happen to be one of the great challenges to psychologists around the world. Not very long ago, one came in to see me, and I have been examined by some of the most famous psychologists in the world. But one came in to see me, he said, "Peter," he said, "you ought to be right now in the middle of a midlife crisis." I said, "Dr. Bob, that can't be true." He said, "Why not?" I said, "I still get pimples." But your personality can be changed. Let me illustrate. I have been examined so many times, and they have told me, and it's quite true, I am an extremely deep introvert. I like to be alone. I go out into the outback of Australia on a camel, just so that I can get way out into the desert with the eagles, yes, and the snakes and the crocodiles and the wild pigs and everything else. And you'd may be interested to know that Australia has the largest camel population on earth. We actually export camels to Saudi Arabia. And please be careful if you go into crocodile country, because a crocodile can beat you over 200 yards on land. So if you want to be safe, always take someone with you that can run slower than you can. But your personality can be changed. I had a choice to make when I came to Christ. I knew that my life was irreversibly changed, and I wanted to change the rest of the world. And so I knew that I had to work on my personality. I had to be more outgoing. I had to be able to handle more than one person at a time. And so I undertook disciplines that would allow me to do that. And within that, I realized that motivation is deeply personal. The second principle of motivation is you must have clearly defined boundaries. If you want to be motivated all the time, you have to be selective. You cannot do everything. I would love to be able to play a trumpet. And in frustration one day, I went out and bought one and took it back home, and for 2 days nearly blew myself inside out and finished up coming up with a tune. But I came back to my original thought, and that is you have to be selective. If I'm going to put energy in that direction, it's going to subtract some energy from somewhere else. And do not allow intrusion into your preferred area, otherwise you will diminish thrust. And reassess your boundaries regularly for saboteurs. Those things that creep into your life that you don't realize that you've reached a point of crossroads and you've gone off in a different direction than what you intended to. Remember that boundaries are not limitations, they are selective choices. And you cannot allow other people to make choices for you. Life is not chances, it's choices. God has never robotized the mind of man. After the episode in the Garden of Eden, he did not come down and renegotiate. You need to have clearly defined boundaries. And definitions means that you have evaluated your own life. You are responsible for you. The third principle of being motivated all the time is to have long-term goals, and we're going to talk about that this afternoon. What we're going to do in the break is have 2 cardboard boxes, one with men written on it and one with women written on it. And if you have ambition, if you really want to do something magnificent with your life, then put your name in there. I'm not looking for phone numbers or addresses, just put your name in there. And what we will do this afternoon is bring 2 men and 2 women up here, and we will set their life goals in front of everyone. We will show you the techniques we use in the World Center of Entrepreneurial Studies, and in that case, when we do that individually, we charge $5,000 per person. And we're going to do that and show you how to do it. So if you're interested and you have ambition and you'd like to come up on stage, and what we will do is just shake it out and pull out 2 men and 2 women at random. And we will show you goal setting in a totally different dimension, quite different than you've ever seen before. Normally I do it to about 10 or 20,000 people. But a goal for life ensures motivational permanence. So many people reach a point in their life where they run out of puff and they don't know what else to do. They've bought all the furniture they need, they've replaced the cars several times, they've upgraded in housing, and they've got some money in the bank, and they run out of energy, they run out of motivation. Long-term goals create commitment. And long-term goals turn fantasy thinking into fantastic action. Something else that we've discovered about long-term goals: they can actually reprogram your body clock. Scientifically, we've proven that. Anyone here in real estate ought to know that when someone leaves their large estate and moves into a condominium, if they're around 60 years of age, they've only got about 5 or 6 years of life left in them, unless they've got some other major interest. But we have also found that people at 60 or 70 years of age, if they have a magnificent obsession, if they have a long-term goal, then their life can go on many years past what the expectation would have been. One of the great privileges I have in life is that I work with some of the biggest corporate giants in history. And I think of men like W. Clement Stone that I've worked with from the Combined Insurance Company of America. 90 years of age and still going. Why? Because he has a magnificent obsession. I was with Dr. Norman Vincent Peale just prior to Christmas, training his staff in the Peale Center for Christian Living. And here's Norman, 95 years of age and still going. Why? Because he has this long-term goal. And long-term goals ensure long-term satisfaction. And we'll come to grips with that this afternoon, and we'll explain the process of that. But ask yourself the question, do I have a goal for the rest of my life? Remember that that goal ought to be expandable, because you're going to be an entirely different human being 5 years from now than what you are now. Principle number 4. If you want to be motivated all the time, you have to develop a positive mental attitude. How do you do that? There are many ways, but believe that anything can be done by somebody. Why not you? And why not now? You are unique in the universe. God has never ever made anyone quite like you. Your toe print, your voice print. You are the carriers of dreams, and you are the empire builders of tomorrow. And act physically motivated, and very often you'll be mentally stirred. Do you carry with you a daily affirmation sheet? I have written on a small piece of cardboard, and I've had it for many years, it's very old. I have written down all the things I have to have done by my 85th birthday before I go into second gear. And I read it every day. Do you take such a serious look at life that you are prepared to do that? Or do you expect God to do for you what you're just too bone lazy to do for yourself? Remember that God is committed to optimists, and God is committed to our development. Do you have a daily affirmation sheet to keep you on the track? And learn what I call thought displacement. You get a negative thought and you displace it with a positive thought. Your mind starts to wander sometimes when you lay awake at night in all sorts of ways, bouncing off the walls and the ceiling. Have you learnt to displace those thoughts with thoughts that are positive and good and honest and true? And then mind talk. Don't let your subconscious mind take you along a path that you really do not want to go. You need to stand sentinel at the gate of your mind and challenge thoughts as they come in. You are in control of your mind. The Bible says, let this mind be in you, which is in Christ Jesus. It's important for us to have the mind of God, to think good thoughts, pure thoughts. You can develop a positive mental attitude. Principle number 5 is develop a deep personal integrity. I get a little tired, ladies and gentlemen, the way that the Christians are not respected around the world. We cheat on our tax, we tell lies, and then we expect people to accept Christ because of his goodness, but they can't see it through you. And I think it's about time that the Christian church and the members of the church started to tell the truth. I heard a Christian say the other day with shock, yes, I told him I would do it, but I haven't signed anything. Your word should be your bond, even if it hurts, especially when it hurts. Who are you fooling when you say you will do something and you don't do it? Have a deep personal integrity to yourself. You may not lie directly to me or to your spouse or to your pastor, but how often do you lie to yourself when you say you're going to do something and you don't follow through with it? And then we find that that strengthens the chains that already bind. The more times you tell yourself that you're going to do something, or you make an inward commitment to do something and do not follow through with it, the more you are binding yourself in motivation, because you know that the things you say you will not carry out, and your subconscious mind will not give you the energy to do it, because it knows that you're using what we call pseudo-rationale. Why not be someone you can admire? Look at the high qualities you see in other people to develop your deep personal integrity, and try to copy some of the things that you admire. And do not ever play games of danger with your subconscious mind. Develop a deep personal integrity. Principle number 6, if you want to be motivated all the time, select with care your friends. I do not allow anyone to select me as a friend. I will want to qualify it. I will want to make sure that that's the person I want to have a relationship with. I want to make sure that they're not going to lead me along a path I do not want to go, or put obligations upon me that I will not meet. I look for several things in selecting friends. The first thing I look for is, are they honest? Do I have to put a percentage mark on everything they tell me? Can I just forget about that area at all and just accept whatever they say? That if they say they're going to do something, it gets done. If they tell me something about someone or something, I can accept it without having to qualify it. I also want to see that they have a sense of humor. I think God has a sense of humor. I was a reject from school. I was rejected just about everywhere I went. Even when I came to Christ, they wouldn't even let me hand out hymn books. They said I wouldn't be able to do it properly. And I think that God has a sense of humor. I now write a best-selling book in less than 15 hours without any reference material and no correction, and it's usually worth $5 million when I finish. God does have a sense of humor. And be with high flyers. I want to be with people. I'm not suggesting that they have to have arrived, but I want to be with people that have got empires in their brains. I want to be with people that are going to stretch me, and when I suggest something that I'm going to do, I want them to be able to say, Peter, is that all you're going to do? Haven't you ever thought about taking it a little further and doing, and they mention something? Yes, I want them honest. I want them to have a sense of humor. I want them to have empires in their brains, but also I want them to be generous. I don't even like being in the company of skinflints. You know, that they hold their coins so tightly that the imprint is in their hand. Or I've met people that they can lend things. I'll lend their golf clubs or their motor car or their boat. But can you actually give away cold, hard cash? I mean, just take it out and gladly, happily, and hilariously give money away. Well, I know that some of you are saying, well, I can't afford to do that. You cannot afford not to do it. We did it when we were very poor. And sometimes it was very hard to do, but we just happened to believe in what the Bible says in Luke 6:38, give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together. As you give it out to others, so it will be given unto you. Yes, honesty, humor, high flyers, and generosity. That's my selection process. Why don't you select with care your friends? And as you travel through life, you may find that you lose some friends. Because as you start to stretch your spiritual and intellectual muscles, you'll make your friends feel very uncomfortable. And they'll say, you're not what you used to be. And they'll be disappointed about that, but you'll be glad about it because you wanted to grow and expand and you wanted to take hold of the earth and give it a shake for God. Don't be too concerned about that, because one day you will face God alone, and you won't be able to tell him that it was your friends that didn't want you to do it. You'll be alone, and you will have to give an account of what you did down here on earth. The seventh principle of being motivated all the time is to operate under personal timetables. You've got to be able to use time wisely. Some time ago, I was at a major convention, and I was asked to speak on time management. And for the first few minutes, I had a rubbish tin, and I just stood there and just burnt money and let it fall in and just keep burning it. And the whole auditorium was hushed, and they were gasping. I think some of them had difficulty in restraining themselves. They wanted to come out and put the notes out. And I said to them, I don't know why you're so concerned about that. You are doing that every day. Because time is money. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. You're never going to be able to buy back 1 second of time. And so we have to operate under personal timetables if we're going to be motivated all the time. I have people saying, but you don't know my metabolism. I tend to arrive late for everything. And I say to them, do you miss aeroplane flights? They say no. I say, well, you don't miss them because you discipline yourself, because you know they will not wait for you. I have a very simple attitude in business. If anyone's 10 minutes late, I'm not there. I'm gone. But the simple reason is, if they made an appointment with me and I made an appointment with them, it was an appointment of integrity as well as business. And I'm not there after 10 minutes. They will have to reschedule. And I may never ever reschedule with them again. Not because I'm rude, but because they were rude. And if there was an accident or a problem, I reschedule it immediately. Do not allow other people to control you if you want to be motivated all the time. And keep a respect for your own lifespan. I'm 61 years of age today. I believe, according to my children, they're praying that I'll hit the ton. They said, Dad, the way you look after yourself, the way that you put together, the way you handle yourself, you should reach 100. And I'm hoping for at least another 35 years hard work left in me. You see, I understand that time is my most valuable possession, and I'm going to use it well. I'm going to make sure that I put aside spaces of time to renew my mind and my spirit and my body. Yes, you've got to have a respect for time. Principle number 8, if you want to be motivated all the time, minimize people dependency. Irrespective of the size of your company or the size of your involvement, make sure that you have the smallest number of people reporting directly to you. Operate under a time relationship system. Don't follow the crowd that you've developed. Some time ago, I was asked to meet with our government because we are in a major recession in Australia. It would be more like a depression. We have 12% unemployment, of 17% unofficially. And they asked if there was any way that I had an idea that they could develop more small businesses in our state. And I asked them to define what a small business was. And being apt politicians, they had not even defined that. And it took them a half an hour while I was sitting there to argue it out between each one of them. And finally they said, yes, any business that has less than 200 people. And I shook my head. They said, you don't agree with that? I said, no. They said, well, what would you class as a small business? I said, General Motors. They said, but they have thousands of people working for them here in Australia, tens of thousands. I said, yes, they're a small business. They said, but look at all the people they've got working for them. I said, they made a loss last year. I made a profit. I'm bigger than what they are. You see, we've got to clear our thinking. Some time ago in our real estate business, before I sold it out, I would go through the offices and I would do what I call a commando raid. and I would take 3 or 4 of the letters off the typing pools as I went through, and I'd sit in my office and read them and then give them back. The next morning I had a meeting with my staff, and I looked at Lorraine and I said, "Lorraine, you wrote a letter to one of our clients yesterday and said, would you contact this office as soon as possible? Would you tell me what a time frame is for as soon as possible?" She said, "Well, I mean as soon as possible." I said, "Yes, you put that in the letter, but you haven't given me an explanation for a time frame for as soon as possible." She said, "Well, I can't give you a time frame for it." And then one of the other girls was smiling. I said, "You sent a letter to one of our clients and said, contact us at your earliest convenience. Could you give me a time frame for your earliest convenience?" She said, "Well, that's like asking me how long is a piece of string." I said, "Well, why are we sending out these stupid letters that no one seems to understand? When you write to our clients, ask them to contact you by a date with a time frame in it and diarize it." And we found that we could cut down on our staff and even had more efficiency. You see, examine regularly your people quotient. Principle number 9 is remain in control all of the time. Control means that you can change any time. Control means letting reins out and delegating under guidelines with a report system. And be careful of partnerships, particularly as a Christian, that we are not unequally yoked. You don't want someone taking you along a path that you feel uncomfortable about traveling. And control means following your plan, not dominating every event, but setting the principles. Do not be manipulated by people or events. One of my involvements around the world is on the international board of the Robert Schuller Ministry. I'm probably the longest serving international board member there. I helped build the Crystal Cathedral. And one thing that Bob Schuller insists on, he says, never surrender your leadership. Never surrender your leadership. Some people will say, "Well, you know, I don't like the way you're leading." Well, find another leader or lead yourself. I have a sign in my office that says, "Lead or follow, but get out of the way." And if we have to do anything as Christians, we are supposed to lead. We are called salt and light, which means we should penetrate everything, and light, which means we should lead the way. As a Christian, leadership for you is not optional, it's mandatory. You are either a leader in effect or you are a leader in self-imposed exile, but you are a leader. One of my friends says, when my name is on the letterhead, I will always call the shots. And if you have difficulty with that, then go out and show us how it should be done. Don't criticize. Principle number 10. If you want to be motivated all the time, accept total personal responsibility. If you cannot act responsibly for yourself, how can you be trusted by others? And do not abdicate responsibilities. Total responsibility means total planning. Responsibility sometimes means confrontation. And control means future plans in preparation at all times. And one of the corporations that I'm chairman of the board of directors of, we are planning into 25 years into the 21st century. We are looking to have 40 million agents worldwide by the year 2125. And that means that you have to be in planning process all the time. You have to know all the demarcations. You have to know what's going to happen or make some calculated assessment on what's going to happen in the future in different countries. And I'm sure the Bible, as I understand it, teaches personal responsibility. You cannot make a commitment to Christ for someone else. Accept total personal responsibility. If you want to be motivated all the time, principle number 11 is make motivation a habit. We can change our lives by changing our habits. Move it into automatic control. Find a motivational key and use it in other areas. And never let an exception occur. Be objective always. Do not confuse activity with objectivity. You know, so often we're raring to go and we can't go for raring. So often we're running around in circles, and occasionally it pays us just to stop and think. I know that I have been able to achieve more throughout the world and earn more money and help more people with 2 hours of solid, concentrated, focused thought than I have ever been able to do with 3 months hard work. Make motivation a habit. Principle number 12, aspire to something greater than yourself. Have a grand, magnificent obsession. Finally, you are going to expire on this earth. And whatever you've done in that time frame, that is what you've transferred your life for. Wouldn't it be great if your great-great-great-grandchildren knew who you were, and you left a deposit in this nation or the whole world that showed what kind of person you were and the faith that you stood for? Have a grand, magnificent obsession, one that is benefit to others, secondly, large in impact, and thirdly, that it has the only real measure of value, that is permanence. Because when you feel small, it will help you think big. When you feel down, it will get you up. When you feel confused, it will give you clarity. It will also give you a God consciousness and a God perspective. Aspire to something greater than yourself. Principle number 13, always have a futuristic look. Look to the future. Welcome change, program change, control change. I do not like being with people my own age. Why? Because they're always glorifying the past. It wasn't that good, I was there. Number 14, if you want to be motivated all the time, give your motivational gift to others. Be affirming in your remarks. Remember that the Bible does talk about sowing and reaping. And what you give today, you get tomorrow. Be careful on the way up. You meet exactly the same people on the way down. Give your motivational gift to others. And lead, don't dominate. And understand the difference between leaders and mere power holders. And teach personal principles that work. I get a little tired of what happens in the Western world, where we have people that are teaching things that they cannot do. We do not need more teachers, we need more examples. Our children are getting tired of the double standards that we are placing before them, and we wonder why our teenagers are going off the tracks. Principle number 15, be grateful, not critical. Now, moving through these, we have a great deal to get through today, and this would normally be, you know, a half-day event. Remember that there is always a bright side. You are what you made of your life. You are today the choices that you have or have not made in the past. You are today the books that you have read or have not read in the past. You are today the experiences that you were prepared to enjoy or endure in the past. Be grateful, not critical. Remember that criticism is loveless. Principle number 16, remove motivational blocks forever. Turn problems into procedures. Some time ago, I was at the Los Angeles airport for 9 hours. There were many of the airports further on were blocked out with snow. And that was some years ago, and I was on my own. Rabina wasn't with me, which is unusual. She can usually pacify me. And I was walking up and down like a caged lion. And suddenly I had a moment of insight, and I said, hey, this is what you like. You like being alone. You're in an airport, nobody knows you, you can do whatever you want to do. And so I went to the bookshop and got some paper, and I started to work on my mind and then my subconscious mind and the deep recesses of my mind, and looked at the biggest motivational block I had in my life. And then I programmed it out. In those 9 hours, I programmed it out of my life forever. Why not? you take a day off sometime and look at your biggest motivational block. Go back into your mind and your subconscious mind and in the deep recesses of your cortex and ask the question, why am I doing this? There has to be a reason. And when you hit the reason, then reprogram your mind. Remove motivational blocks forever. Principle number 17, look for mentors. Remember that mentors are usually bigger than life. They expand us. So often when I'm faced with a challenge, I ask myself, what would Solomon have to say about this? I think of Napoleon. What would he do for strategy in this area? And so I go through all the people that I have read in biblical and ancient history right up to today and ask myself the question, what kind of mindset would they have on this difficulty? And choose mentors in different fields because they broaden us. And don't be frightened to choose deceased mentors because they very often inspire us. Principle number 18, if you want to be motivated all the time, have built-in personal incentives. Have a reward program. I have a friend who is fabulously wealthy and a dynamic Christian and one of the great contributors to Christian work around the world. When you go into his manor, he has special items all around there, magnificent treasures from different parts of the world. And when you ask him about them, he tells you, yes, that was a reward I gave myself for a particular achievement. This is another one. This is another one. And they're meaningless to anyone else. But to him, every time he looks at them, he smiles. And he remembers that he promised himself that if he achieved that particular level and he paid up on time. Yes, we need to do that even for intangibles. You can be motivated all the time. I'm looking at that clock and I'm right on the button. Now I want to do something else. And I want your involvement as I do it. I want you to be thinking of principles for success. What are the principles for success? And I'm going to ask you some questions and get you involved, because I want you to tell me what are the principles for success and see if we can come together with a few simple conclusions as soon as I put these few lines down. Call out to me principles on success. Faith. Keep going. Motivation. Hard work. Activity. Vision. Keep. Meditate. Discipline. Integrity. Two more. Problem solving. Solving. Ability. That'll do. I've got 10 there. Faith, motivation, hard work, activity, vision, meditate, discipline.